All right, you guys, thanks for coming on Deep Dive Plants Class 2. And today we are going to talk about one of the largest plant families, which is the Asteraceae or Compositae plant family. But before we do that, I just want to get some feedback from you guys on how this week has gone since so much has been happening. I have used Cena in very high potency this week, which is a plant that we're going to be talking about today. What is it that you guys are feeling just emotionally, very parasitic energies out there? To me, it feels like our country is a reality TV show for the rest of the world. Like we have become the manifestation of the junk that we all love to watch, that people just love to like obsess about. And it's now like been projected into our reality. And so it's like, it's at the point to me where personally, I'm just like, oh my God, this is kind of, you couldn't have scripted a better TV show. Anybody feeling this way? Like it's starting to get insane. Okay. Any like emotions out there that you're struggling with? Last week, gosh, this whole past month, I'm on the West Coast, so I'm struggling with fires. And my best friend here, her fire burned down and she moved, and it was quite sad. And a lot of people were telling me in my case study class that they're feeling a lot of sadness, like just overwhelm and sadness. So I put in the notes here just, that I want our class to be inspiring. I actually wrote class is going to be inspirational and inspiring as a mistake, but I want this class to inspire you because I want us all to have a chance to be lifted in our week. I want you guys all to finish class today and feel like, wow, this is cool. I'm connected to the earth and the plants, and I know all this new information and I'm inspired. Disbelief, like it's a little bit of a shock, I think, for us. Like, wow, Trump has COVID. And the possible repercussions of how things, the myriad of possibilities our country could go in. Like it's very unpredictable, it feels at this point. I'm feeling determined to get things done, to do what I'm here to do. What are you here to do? At the very least right now with everything, my hope is that our purpose in life is coming to light. So I'm curious what you are here to do, Erin. So I listed some remedies in the notes. I put Natmir, which I've been telling a lot of you guys already, for the shutdown for kids. A remedy that's come up 2 times this past week is cocculus. Cocculus is a remedy for also grief, but it's the grief of like that you're caring about somebody or someone, and it's like you're putting all of yourself into it and you're getting kind of like lost in the case. They say from night watching. Night watching is a term like your kid is sick all night long and you're caring for them all night. And so you get kind of dizzy with the amount of watching, like you lose your sense of self. So I was taking the case of a child who, hasn't been able to play with kids, and she feels this great sense of loss and is a bit disoriented in life. And so cocculus helped her. I feel like I am living 2 lives, my own, which feels stable, and that of the world, which feels chaotic. I agree. There's something really quite, when you guys watch the news, what happens to you energetically? Like, at what point do we start to maybe recognize that the news itself is an unstable viral contagion. Like it's almost like our culture is a plague in and of itself. And if infection is information, are we infecting ourselves? Like, I had to think that because I woke up the night of the debate and watched 5-10 minutes of it at 3 a.m. in the morning, and then felt super like in the morning, like, oh my God, like. And then I went to speak to a woman who's renting my parents' house, but I asked her to move out because the situation wasn't good, and she just screamed at me without giving me any like space to talk and explain the situation. And I was just like, oh my God. I truly believe that the projection of information just plays itself out. It becomes, you receive it and then it gets reprojected. It's kind of like ping pong balls, or what's that game with the the pinball, like pinball, and that information's like a pinball and it wants to bounce around, and then people add to it. And so I don't know. I mean, my family is checked out of all social constructs. It all feels too draining and sets us up for physical illness. The world is dysfunctional, a dysfunctional and abusive family. Yeah. So it's crazy. It's like we're treating autistic kids who the world is getting crazy. So they've shut themselves off. They've shut their boundaries down. And to what degree do we need to start shutting ourselves off? Do we need to start pulling ourselves off Facebook? You know, I love Facebook. I mean, I have to say it allows us great conversation. At the same time, there's this shadow, you know, really present, that has really worked its way through our culture. So let's work together as a group of women who care, who are centered in our hearts, who want the best for our communities, who are going to revolutionize medicine, and make new modalities of medicine together. Agreed. So our intention today is that class is going to be inspirational, revolutionary, educational, joyful, and anything else you guys need. All right, take a deep breath in. Cygnus, which is the remedy from the swan, is very similar to Ignatia. I gave that to 1 or 2 people as well. It's a remedy for grief. And a remedy for needing to leave the situation, a tubercular remedy. We turned off our streaming services, we limit our social media, and we spend most of our time outdoors. Right. I agree. So we're coming back to our roots. We're coming back to our inner shaman. You know, that attack energy that's out there. You can energetically feel into it. Like when something is coming in and impacting you in an energetic way, and something's trying to attack you or affect you, or you feel it, go into your body and ask, what does that feel like? Where is that residing? And what energy can I resonate with to clear it? You know, I was just like, oh, after the debate and all the chaos and attack energy, I watched part of the debate and I felt the back part of my head like almost heat up, like swell up. It was like lower brain inflammation right away. So I just felt Sina at the time, right? Anything else that's been helpful for you guys in this time of political chaos? How are you guys feeling about COVID? Nervous about it? Feel like you've got it figured out? Do we need another class talking about it? Maybe in like a month? I gave maybe a 1 long class in the spring on remedies for COVID. Hookworm, to get my relatives' energy away from us. Prayer. Not nervous at all. COVID seems like the least of our worries these days. All good with COVID. Interesting. That's really interesting. What's the most of your worries? I'm just curious. Like, what are you mostly worried about? What do you feel like puts you on edge? Civil war. Okay. Okay. Don't know. Loss of freedom. Loss of health freedom, maybe. Yeah. I'm curious what's going to happen when a leader says, I'm injecting myself with this and now all of you guys have to too. And yeah, it's definitely ignorance of people. Yeah. Dictator Dan in Melbourne, never opening us back up. I am forced to fight for my rights. It's strange, right? It's a real nationalism. There's always been this kind of nationalistic energy that has pushed people towards this, in many instances, historically. Yeah. Yeah. So just take a deep breath in and out. And today's class, the Asteraceae, is about autonomy. It's about individual plants that are quite, they're about this autonomous self. So we're going to look at some pictures of them. And I've got somebody in class, Stephanie Witzel, who has taken a lot of these remedies for herself and for her child, who will have as a guest speaker talk about it, and that'll be really fun. But I'm going to show you some of the plants from this family. Okay, so what makes this plant family unique? Something, when I do share screen, it doesn't show me if people are not in the room and need to be allowed in. So hopefully everybody, I would suggest you guys just, if you have to leave, don't log out, because there's this waiting room feature right now. So this plant family is the largest flowering plant family. There's 25,000 species. A lot of them look like this kind of yellow sunflower look. A sunflower is called a sunflower because it follows the sun. It's like a solar receiver, and it just moves its head around. Yeah, it's like a solar panel, and they move around, and they're like the sun. They look like the sun. And the center disc is called a sun disc, and then it has rays that come out. And so you can see them as like gifts of sun and the sunshine. That's the way I see them. Why they're called compositae is that they're actually composites of many little flowers. So if you were to look close, like you can see in this pink flower, that these are a lot of little flowers. So they all have this kind of sun ray look to them. There's many, many well-known plants in this group. There is cooking oils, lettuce, sunflower seeds, herbal teas, marigold, calendula. And these are many of the remedies that are in this family, which we'll cover. In Schulten's book, here. Okay. In Schulten's book here, he has probably 50 or 75 remedies from this plant family, but most of them we can't even get in the United States. They're available in Europe. If anybody has $1 million and wants to invest on bringing a whole European pharmacy to the US, it'd be great. So I'm just going to be teaching you the ones that we have available in the pharmacies here. I'm going to show you right now just photos of plants from this family, and I want you to spend time just looking at each picture and kind of receiving it like you would a person or a patient, and just see how you feel about them. Like, what happens to you when you look at that flower? These are all medicinal plants. Okay, so this is the first one, and it's burdock. And I guess you can't tell, but those are all tiny little flowers. Arctium lapa. So just take a look at it, see how you feel. If you're drawn to it, maybe it's a good remedy for you. And I'm going to do this for most of the plant family so that you guys can kind of receive the energy of them. And you can receive the energy of a plant just by looking at it. This is the artichoke. It's such a pretty color. Here's milk thistle. These first three all happen to be major liver plants. This milk thistle I was pulling out of my garden today because they really poke you. I'm not quite sure what the doctrine of signatures means because they have such strong pokey thorns, but some of you know about milk thistle as an herb. It's one of the most powerful liver regenerating herbs that there are. And you can actually get whole milk thistle seeds and grind them up and put them in your food or put them in your smoothie. This is wild lettuce. You don't think of this lettuce shape as like a flower, but in a way it is. And it does flower, but it has that sunflower shape. And you guys know this one. Why do they call this an invasive species? I don't know. This is a highly medicinal plant. You can eat the leaves, and we can use the roots, and we can use all parts of it as medicine. This is a close-up because the bigger picture just looks like tiny white flowers. This is a close-up of Eupatorium bone set. So they would use it to help set bones when people would have bone break. So a lot of these flowers have this look. You're going to see a similarity here. This is called Wyethia. Why it's called poison weed, I don't know. Here's arnica. How many of you guys have used arnica? I think all of us have. This Sina is such an important one. I couldn't find a flowering picture of it. It just looks like lots of green grassy stuff. Sunflower, all of you guys know about sunflowers. Sunflower is not known as a homeopathic remedy quite so strong, but it does have medicinal effects. Ragweed, ugh. I shouldn't say that. Every plant is beautiful, but some of us have terrible allergies, and a plant like this could make our whole day just miserable. How beautiful is this plant? A lot of you know Echinacea. I'm not sure if this is the case, but when I started naturopathic school, Echinacea was all the rage. I don't know if it's still the rage, but it was like in everything, and everyone was taking Echinacea. It was like so popular as an immune stimulant. It still is. Is Echinacea super popular? I'm sure. Goldenrod, also very allergy stimulating. Solidago. This is a remedy for the kidneys, and it has a kind of a yellowy, reminds me of urine. Grindelia gum plant. You can kind of I think of the sticky stuff on this plant to kind of help me differentiate it a little bit. Daisy. You know, how many of us know daisy, but don't consider it an incredibly powerful homeopathic plant? It is. You know, it's like some of these plants, we just kind of walk by them and think of them as common, and we don't realize how absolutely powerful and fundamental they can be. This is just as important as arnica for trauma. This is called fleabane or erigeron, which is supposed to be for flea bites, although that doesn't show up so strongly in the Materia Medica. Calendula. How many of us use calendula cream and calendula salve? So pretty. This plant, it's like the more you pick it, the more it grows. They're like, okay, you're using me, I'll make more for you. And that's how a lot of plants are. It's like as soon as you take from it, it's saying, okay, you need me, I'll give you more. This one's called brachyglottis. I have a good case of this I can share. It's supposed to be in New Zealand. It's not an American plant. Senecio, chamomilla. Do some of you guys have this growing local to you? This grows local all over the place where I live. There's also that pineapple chamomile. I'm not sure if that one is as medicinal. Achillea. Artemisia vulgaris or wormwood. I believe that this is something like this is what they might make moxa out of, or maybe someone can look that up. Tanacetum or feverfew. And this one is called abrotonum, southernwood. So just look at those and see if any of them kind of stand out for you and write their name down so you just have it available. And you can kind of remember it like, oh, that's such like a beautiful, some people like, you know, and here's a question. Why do we study remedies as families? So we've talked about this already. Why do we study remedies in groups of families? And one of the reasons is people have affinities for certain families. So my husband's family has an affinity for this plant family. And so it's like he needs, the people in his family need not only like a lot of chamomilla, they do well with senna and arnica, and he's very attracted. Like he'll walk by and be like, that's my favorite kind of flower. Like he'll just be like, that's my flower. It's interesting when a man too, they like point out a flower, they're like, that's my favorite kind of flower, because you know, men are less, you know, conditioned to like flowers. So ask your partner or husband, what's your favorite kind of flower? Because it's kind of a curious thing. He's always just like, that's the kind of flower I like. So yeah, you know, I have an affinity for the Papaveraceae or the opium family. Those remedies do well for me. And I think it's because my mom is a pain control addict. She has pain and she loves painkillers, right? She loves to kill the pain and has for her whole life. And I've needed to take remedies from that family, I think, as a result. So who are we can look at these plants as plants to help for all the acutes that we know. And then we can look at them for certain groups of people who really constitutionally be drawn. Like there's a character type that Scholten talks about. He actually, in his book starts with the least evolutionary advanced plants and goes to the most evolutionary advanced plants. So it starts with like algae and mosses. The Asteraceae are at the very back. They're considered evolutionarily advanced. They're advanced enough to help us as medicine on a very deep level. Okay, back to my notes. Okay. All right, so what is it that we're resolving with these remedies? These remedies are well known for the feeling of being beaten, bruised, and wounded on various levels. It could be kind of mentally and emotionally, but it's really about that kind of contusion, that the fact that you've kind of bounced against something, you've been punched. You know, athletes and construction workers and people who've been in car accidents. And we talk about accident prone. Why is it that people are accident prone? What makes people accident prone? Is that you tend to, the accident stores itself in your tissue, so it plays itself out, right? It wants to. Or you don't integrate fully. So, you know, by trauma, I'm referring, for example, to a head injury from a bike ride or surgical trauma that's just really like intense, or a car accident. And what happens with a car accident? I'm curious, as a DO, Thea, what you think happens when people are in a car accident. You know, energetically, what I see is you're going, you know, 60 miles an hour, you hit something, and people talk about it, they can go out of body, you disintegrate, right? So the body flies forward, the energy body does this. So it's almost like physical body, energy body, and it's like, it's a shock, right? And so when that accident happens, it's some level of shock or trauma where there's a loss of integration. Okay, the energy body and the physical body lose their integrity. What happens when you lose your integrity? You bruise. You lose your blood. Your blood goes, you know, you swell up. Your body is like trying to kind of find its center and find its grounding, and but it loses it, right? How many of you have seen an intense injury and then put arnica on it right away, and then you're just amazed to watch it go away, like so fast, right? It's so amazing. I had what is it called? A tooth implant, right? Where they do surgery and they pull out the whole root and they put in a new one. And as soon as you come out of that surgery, your face is like twice as big. I think most people. I took arnica 1M or 10M. I went into the bathroom, took it, and came out, and literally, like, I was completely different within seconds. So that, you know, Ryan was just like, what happened to you? This is, you know, arnica is probably the representative homeopathic remedy for surgeons and plastic surgeons and, you know, physical therapists out there, because it works so well on trauma. So it helps us regain our wholeness. It helps us regain this completeness, this integrity. Okay. What other remedies do we use for post-surgery? I just didn't add this to the notes, but you can write this in. Staph aureus is another really good post-surgery remedy other than arnica. Staph aureus person will feel emotionally traumatized by an event, whereas arnica will be like, it was fine, right? So Staph aureus, it can be any kind of invasive thing, and they actually don't, they feel like there's still pain, like when there's still pain at the site of the scar. That's very Staph aureus. Another really good remedy for your having surgery is a remedy called thiosiamine, thiosiamine. Thiosiamine. You can do it in low potency, like 6C or 12C. And what it does is it prevents adhesions. It prevents, sometimes if it's abdominal surgery, people will scar up and they'll get adhesions. And you can take thiosiamine to prevent adhesions from occurring, but you can also take it if it's a major surgery and you think you're going to keloid or have a big scar. So thiosiamine is to prevent scarring. So a surgery protocol, which I could email out to you, would be to take arnica the day of, the day after surgery. You could, if you feel like scarring is a possible issue or adhesions, you could add in thiocyanine. I don't usually say just take Staphylococcus aureus off the boat. Usually if people complain of some sort of procedure and they're emotionally traumatized by it, I give Staphylococcus aureus later. So say you have somebody who's lands themselves in an ICU or an ER and you can't give them a remedy into their mouth. What do? You're like there and you're like, oh my God, I really want to give arnica, like they so need it. Put it under their armpit. Put it like somewhere you can just put it on their body. You can spray it. Maybe you can put it in their water, whatever it is, it can help so much. Just yesterday, my daughter, she wants to be a vet, and a bird flew into the window and just laid there unconscious, right? Because birds do that, they fly into windows. I was laying there unconscious and we gave it arnica. And then we put it in a box and it just like laid there, and birds do that and they die, but it got up within like 10 minutes and then flew away, and who knows, but you can even give arnica to animals. The more intense the trauma, the less likely people stay in their original state. The larger the stress, the more it's about species susceptibility. So all of us in a hardcore car accident are going to respond in the same way. All of us who, something awful happens to, I don't even want to give examples, but we can all use arnica in these instances, right? Because it's about species susceptibility. Versus, for example, we all get bit by a Lyme tick. Some people hardly get a response at all. Like loggers might not get a response to a bite from a Lyme tick. It's an opportunistic infection, right? And so it's finding its opportunity to go in and find where your weak point is. And some people, it'll just lay them out for, 10 years to have one tick bite. Arnica is good for everybody in many situations. So it's a species susceptibility. Sina is good for everybody in many situations. Eupatorium, a lot of these remedies I'm going to talk to you about today is good for many people in traumatic situations. Okay. So you guys know I'm a big fan of Scholten, so I put in all of this. Oh, somebody else did the same thing for a bird. Yeah. Yep. And keeping a bottle of arnica in your car is something I do as well. So the Asteraceae as a whole, they have a strong drive. So there's the species susceptibility where we can all use these remedies, but the people who kind of need them constitutionally are people who are independent. They want to live their own life. They don't want to be interfered with. So their attitude is just like, I can do it. Don't bother me. Let me do this. I can do it myself. They get into an injury or accident and then they're like, I'm fine, it's okay. And what's really dangerous, and Paul Herskew, my teacher, he really emphasized this, is people get into accidents and they say, I'm okay, because that's what they're telling their body, but they're not. And so you have people who get into like a ski accident. I think this happened to some famous Kennedy or something, a ski accident, and they say they're okay, and like 3 hours later they're dead from concussion or a bleed out, right? Because nobody's checked. They haven't had an MRI, or no one's given them arnica, or there hasn't, they're not. It's challenging when some of these people, will say and they'll really push away anybody from helping them. That something will hurt them. They're like, don't touch me, and you're like, okay. And that's a hard thing because really maybe they need to be checked out. Even kids can be this way. My daughter is this way. When she gets hurt, she does not want me to touch it or look at it. She's this way because her father is that way and her whole family is that way. So his family has this, they're very composite. Yeah. So you say you're well, you send the doctor away, you don't want to be hassled, you don't want vaccines, you don't want an operation, you don't want interventions. They want to keep their integrity. Any blow, beating, accident, hemorrhage is an intrusion into a boundary and a violation of their integrity. They might not even like being touched. They're like doing something, you put your arm around them and they're just like, leave me alone, I'm doing something. Okay. This comes from a place of a desire to be an integrated whole. This comes from an independent place. So it's interesting because it's annoying to me when my daughter's that way, but I see her as this like very independent child. So in a way, I'm grateful for it. They don't want to be a complex of different personalities that act different in different situations. They really honor what is authentic, and I have to say that this is true for Ryan. Any of you guys know him? He's really authentic. Like, he says what he believes. He doesn't veer from that. He doesn't behave one way with one person and one way with another. Like, what does it look like when you see a disintegrated personality? Or somebody, these are like standalone flowers versus somebody who's anacardium, who acts one way with one person and one way with another, and that plant relies on living on another plant in a way, in a parasitic way. So, so these are plants that want to be these integrated whole selves. Despite that, sometimes I feel they're not strong enough to keep influences out of their system. They feel this lack of resistance. So for them, their issue is, how do I keep my boundaries and my resistance up so that I can stay integrated and whole? Is that by keeping people away? Is that by throwing and touching and pushing and hitting to get things out of the way? Is it by being aggressive and irritable to get people out of my way? It's like whatever they can do to maintain their boundaries and their resistance, right? I put in here, I also see it as a desire to integrate the pieces of ourselves from past lives. And I say that because of Stephanie's case. And when she had cancer, we were doing meditations and past lives came up. And they were past lives where there was trauma. There was like stonings and beatings. And that was being healed. When we heal these traumas, we're healing them maybe in our current life, but maybe we're healing them on a soul level from past lives too. And the goal is to be this integrated, independent self. Autonomous. They want to be autonomous and independent. They have a strong need for integrity. When someone has integrity, like, you can feel it, right? You feel like this is a person that I can trust. This is a person who's really honest at their core. And that's a feeling of this person. Like, they may be really irritable and annoying on the outside in a certain way, but they're hardworking, they're productive. Yeah, the notes mentioned, that's right. So psychologically, they want to become integrated. Typical disease is classic influenza with high fever, joint pains. They won't have a fear of death, but they want to be left alone and have an aversion to food and drinks, but they do not fear death. This comes from a kind of natural spiritual confidence, a trust in nature or God. That's kind of deep, and I don't really have any comment on that, but maybe Stephanie will, because Stephanie's case, it was very much about spiritual integrity, and coming into her body in a spiritually centered way that was very true to herself, as well as overcoming fear of death. So I think on the deepest level, there's a truth here that will resonate in her case, which we can share. Could they become much more fearful? We'll get to this, but this is a huge plant family, and there are plants in this family that are syphilitic in nature, that are much more about the disintegrated self. So we're talking about like what the nature of the family is, but then on that whole spectrum, there's people who will be they're in that process of disintegration, and they're in schizophrenic states, or their body is completely infectious and falling apart, and they need echinacea or artemisia. Okay. So intrusions, accidents, wounds, bruises, they want to protect their bodies against attack from enemies. Touch can be like an attack. So we see this with Sina and Chamomilla. It's like, don't touch me, or I want this, or I'm throwing this at you. There's a kind of a touchiness there. Integration is the integration of all the small flowers into one big flower. They don't want to be a victim of their sub-personalities. Have you heard that concept of sub-personalities? Like, we behave this way and then we behave this way, and those personalities can be in conflict with one another. They want to be really authentic to themselves. They love truth. They don't like hypocrisy. They want to be individuals. Through like a fever, they may realize their life purpose and become more independent and strong. A high fever in a child can somehow burn the personality into the child. That's so interesting. I mean, I don't know what to say about that. They hate humiliation and belittling. They want to feel safe in a family with a strong father. Okay. So there's also the physical sensation that Sankaran came up with. And the physical sensation is, I feel burned, wounded, hurt. This really hurt me. I feel really insulted. I feel really injured here. And this injury can result in a kind of a numbness. But ultimately, what I often see it the most is like, I don't want to be touched anymore. Like, don't touch me, or I'm not comfortable. I should write the word comfortable. They desire comfort. They want to be in a comfortable position. So in Arnica, they're not comfortable in their bodies. They're not integrated in their bodies, so they can't get comfortable in bed. They're tossing and turning. They're uncomfortable, and they want to just feel comfortable. This is a type of person that can maybe take a beating or protect others. Interestingly, when I see people who really need these remedies, sometimes they're people who put themselves constantly in situations where they could get hurt, like firemen or athletes or something like that, where it's like, why are you what? Or they want to prove, they're like, I'm going to jump off this high thing and prove that my body can do this. And I've seen this very strongly in my daughter, which annoys me, but she just wants to jump off the highest thing to show and prove, and then she'll get an injury and be like, I'm okay. And it's like, God. I've hardly had any injuries in my life. And it's not because, well, one, I don't need any remedies from this family and hardly ever do, but I never put myself in situations. I avoid injury creating situations a lot. I just don't do them. But some people do, right? Okay, so here's a case, and this is a really great case where I want to share it with you on the intuitive homeopathy. So in this case, this is a composite case where I gave the remedy Brachyglottis repens, a remedy I had never heard of. But I took the case and I'm like, this is a composite or Asteraceae. I'm going to call this Asteraceae family. This is an Asteraceae case because the case was the woman got a poorly administered steroid injection, epidural steroid injection that created arachnoiditis, which is like a massive painful inflammation in her back. So it created more pain than it probably was going to fix. When she even had an emotion, she would feel it as extreme pain in her back, and she was taking a lot of painkillers. And then what she said was, I will never let anybody touch my spine again. I don't let anybody touch my spine, right? So that like injury and then like, I don't want anybody to touch it is fearful of more injury. And so I was like, gosh, this lady really needs it. I'm muscle testing that she needs it. And then I go through the common remedies. Is it arnica? I'm like, nope, 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 nope. So this is where the muscle testing and the intuition came in. So I just looked up, I'm going to look up all the remedies in this family. I'm going to look at the list of all the remedies in this family and muscle test through them. And I muscle tested this remedy. I'm like, okay, I get a strong yes here. So I look it up. It's nothing I've ever heard of. Puka puka plant from New Zealand. But then I look and I see that horses, when they eat this plant, they lose all power over their hind legs and their spine. So I'm like, that's interesting. This woman lost power in her legs and her spine. So that matches up, and I gave that remedy to her. And the first thing she felt at was that her fingernails started growing. She felt extremely calm, not emotionally reactive. She felt a sense of peace. And then the sense of stabbing pain came back in her leg. So that was there when it first started. So old pain came back. And she kept taking it. And then she reduced her painkillers, 2/3, and she reduced it 3/4. And then she eventually went completely off of it. It was a cure. She got cured from this remedy, brachioglottis. What's kind of cool is maybe like 10 years later, I'm looking at this case and I notice she had a father who was a professor who was so attached to his work that she had to be quiet around him all the time. And so I'll read it to you later, like Scholten, he writes of this case is, for people who've had fathers who belittled them so they had to feel lesser than or lower than all the time. And I read that and I'm like, oh my God, that fit this case too. Her power was taken away, on some level. She was demeaned or belittled in some way that made it her need to kind of recover her power. So a great case. That was a case of a mom who came to me for her panda's child. And then I realized that the panda's child was all about the mom. The girl needed lat caninum, and lat caninum is also about belittling or made lower than. Okay. So in this plant family, injury is the main theme, and the response to that injury is numbness or shock or a desire to injure in return. It's like, how many of you guys have seen one kid hit another kid and then the other kid want to hit back? It's like, yeah, you're going to hit me, I'm going to hit you back, and it's like, it's just that automatic response. I've often said this, but when kids have parasites, they hit and throw things. But to me, it's the energy of the parasitic energy in them. It's the worms that are injuring them. Internally, there's an injury. So you can have internal injury on some level of something kind of coming at you, and then you're reacting on some level. Maybe it's energetic too. Maybe, how much of attack energy can we feel in our environment and pick up on it? And it creates this feeling of something's attacking me, right? And then leading to a parasitic picture. So how do we come up with the sensations for these families? So Sankaran, this idea of families came up with the fact that he took all the well-known plants in this family and found all the rubrics that matched up with each other. Originally in homeopathy, they're just one by one creating materia medica for these plants, not looking at the larger family categories. But here we are, and this is showing the various, injuries, shock under chamomilla, hurt sensations. And so this just kind of shows you what's interesting. I didn't realize that Sina, we know it for worms, but it's also a remedy for concussion. So maybe you get somebody who has a concussion or fall or a blow, and they don't test as well for arnica, and maybe SENA is what they need. SENA, how many of you guys, well, I'm not sure, but I've seen a lot of cases of kids who have seizures and head trauma, and it's SENA underlying it. It's a parasitic picture underlying it. So here I'm just listing out the various rubrics in this plant family that are all about that injury. So let's just go into detail on these cases. A kind of an interesting thing to note is this idea of the integrity, like the whole shell of the body, the whole container of the body being breached or broken and creating bruising. Is that a lot of these remedies are made into topical preparations more than any other group of remedies. We have calendula and arnica and bone set poultices. We want to apply them to the skin to bring integrity back. So you can think of that when using these plants. You can put them in a bath. You can apply them to your breasts or wherever there's in pain for you. When you look at these plants, you can hold them to your body and say, I am an integral, independent, strong person. So arnica, let's just go into a little bit of detail. I've touched on it a lot. Arnica is the main representative for homeopathy and this plant family as well, because of how huge it is in homeopathy. If you want to be like, if people are like, oh, homeopathy doesn't work, and you say, well, have you used arnica? People are like, that's homeopathy? And you'd be like, yeah, totally. So arnica has a feeling of trauma or injury or intrusion. And this is the cycle that Paul Herskew created. For some of these plants, I'm showing you his cycles that he created because they're so awesome and fundamental. I won't do this for every plant family one because he didn't create them for all of them, but I'm doing it for the ones that are really good. So we leave the body, there's loss of consciousness. We feel sore. The soreness makes us averse to touch, averse to company. So then we close off. We want to become self-reliant. We don't want to have to get into situations. We want to take care of ourselves, and we become independent, overworking, overachieving. And through that work, you become injury prone again. And so I want to give an example of this. So this is like somebody who's in construction. A lot of men I've given this remedy to, and these are men who don't want homeopathy. You have to see that there's something wrong. And the way that they'll act is they'll be kind of nux vomica natmiri. They'll like avoid you. They won't make eye contact. They'll literally, like if you're standing there, they'll walk like 6 feet around you. Maybe even a lot of people right now with COVID are that way. It's that kind of real avoidant personality. They want to really work hard. They're like, okay, so maybe if I just work hard and do my job and avoid people, I'll be fine. But then what they do is they hurt themselves again. My dad, who was in construction his whole life, was in a chronic arnica state at some point, and he was just really antisocial. And then one day I was walking with him down the street, and he just walked right into a pole, it was just like, and hurt himself. It's, it's kind of, it's sad. You create an injury prone situation. Giving arnica to these people just change. You will see them become more social right away. You'll see these dudes. My example here was an ICU nurse, an ER nurse. People who have trauma, I feel like from past lives or in their life, sometimes are really attracted to ER nursing. Actually, I see Melinda down here. You're kind of a nurse like that too. And you're like, what are you trying to resolve? This is a really stressful thing you're putting yourself in. This woman was an ER nurse, but she was such a sensitive person. I felt like she was energetically picking up on all of this stuff she was totally surrounded by. And she said, I crashed in the past year. Now I'm in a cycle of accidents. So it's like those words are just so traumatizing, right? I crashed. I had a concussion. I lost the ability to speak. I was out of work, was in concussion rehab, and then she got into another accident. So she kept getting into accidents, was feeling lost. She lost a lot of her mental capacity to function. So it's like, okay, they think that they're supposed to get back to work, but their mental function is not there. It's a really, it's an awful situation for a lot of people to be in. She actually developed an allergy to painkillers. There's a kind of a numbness in her. I gave her rock rose flower essence, which is also for trauma. And I had her take high potencies of opium and arnica over a week. I gave her opium 1M and arnica 10M. I gave her those high potencies because that's what she tested for. And immediately, I feel happy, productive. My old brain is working. I'm still waking up, but I'm having a lot of dreams again. I love that. I can't thank you enough, right? I've just started giving my hubby Arnica 1M to help with frozen PTSD, responded well, more open and responsive. Yeah, I find this a really not an uncommon state for men, who are especially men who have been in any kind of physical. Most men tend to put themselves in more physical harm than women do and fall into arnica states. One thing I'd like to say about arnica, and if there's any arnica stories out here, I'd love for you to share them. Thank you, Katrina. How to dose arnica, because everyone always asks how to dose it. So we've got arnica gel and arnica massage cream, and there's arnica potencies. There's so much arnica out there. And can we overdo arnica? And I think we can overdo arnica too. If it's a car accident, coma, something really intense, go high potency. Like, that person had a concussion, lost memory, go with like a 10M. If it's like dental surgery and you're out anesthetized, you can do like a 200C or a 1M. If your kid fell off of something really bad, you can put arnica gel. If they're spacing out of it, you can do, arnica 200C. I believe someone asked me recently about injectable homeopathics. I'm thinking arnica might be something that they're putting into injectable form for I have no idea. I believe that I've given my daughter too much arnica. Like, I don't put arnica gel on her anymore, because at some point I was putting arnica gel on her and then she would almost go to repeat the injury, or I would see some provings where it would be she was just I'm fine, leave me alone. And I was like, you know what? You don't have to give arnica for every injury. It's like this, if they're going to be fine, we don't always have to, sometimes we are in this kind of mindset of always giving X for Z, and that's not necessarily true. Okay, any arnica questions? So this woman had intense cramping. I don't necessarily give arnica for cramping or period pains, but arnica, opium, people who've been in a lot of accidents, opium is a really important remedy to consider too. Hellebores, arnica, opium, zinc are all really important brain injury remedies. My daughter's horse riding teacher was kicked in the shin by a horse, took pill after pill. I had arnica 1M. He could immediately walk again. Yeah, great. Okay. All right. Yeah. So, yeah, people swear by arnica. Good stuff. Okay, so calendula, we use it in creams for salves and wounds. It seems to be used in herbal form and homeopathic form in the same way for broken skin surface, stab wounds, knife wounds, C-sections, abrasions. On the mental level, a tendency to start to shock with acute hearing. I don't use this remedy that much other than knowing that it's used in creams and gels and stuff like that, and to use it for that purpose. But I did use it constitutionally at one point for a woman who grew up with a blind mother. So she was always walking around with her mother, worried she was going to get into an accident. And she would have nightmares about accidents happening from this growing up with a mother. And so she was always on edge, that an accident would happen. And calendula was a remedy that muscle tested, but miasmatically, it also is for this kind of this constant fear of something bad happening. And that helped her. Aconite and calendula helped her for that fear of accidents happening. All right, now we're at Bellis. So Bellis is the daisy, and there's a saying about the daisy. The daisy is a flower that is repeatedly trotted on and always comes up smiling afterwards. This is called arnica of the pelvis. So you can think of it as more of a women's arnica, also for strains, sprains, injuries, but specifically breast or pelvic soreness. Sometimes women get punched in the breast and develop like a cyst or a problem there. Bellis can help with that. It's considered a cancer miasm remedy. So it's a major remedy for breast cancer, breast tumors, trauma to deep tissues, trauma from childbirth. And I'm going to read the mental and emotional picture from this remedy. And then I'm going to bring Stephanie on if you're on right now. Because if I read this and you meet Stephanie, you will see this daisy. And the mental and emotional picture of Bellis, I only really kind of got it from Schulten's book later after using it in Stephanie's case. So he writes of Bellis Paredes as these are people who have a need to help others and are very helping, as Stephanie is helping me today. They have friends and want to help them achieve what they need, which is what Stephanie has always done with me. They have strong powers and talents, but are a bit too weak to do it on their own, which Stephanie, you always want a partner to help you with things. They do not want to show their weakness and will go through all sorts of hardships, but when with their close friends can weep easily. They're very enthusiastic people who desire company and friends. So with that, I would like to bring Stephanie on. I'll unmute you. What do you think of that, Stephanie?
That is interesting. And you know what? I don't think we've ever gone through that rubric before.
No, it's not necessarily explained well in like Murphy's Materia Medica. And some of the homeopathic books, they just kind of give these listed keynotes for a remedy without a really nice, succinct description that feels holistic. But that's what I get from Schulten's book. So I didn't have his book or that information when I gave you that remedy. And
Wow.
actually, I'll just give like a kind of a brief synopsis, and then I'd love you to share. We started with that remedy for Finley, who has a ASD diagnosis. And I put some of the notes from the case. You had like multiple car accidents in your pregnancy. And then a car accident when he was like a baby, and you had a car accident when you had breast cancer. I remember your husband calling me. She got into another car accident, and I'm like, oh my goodness. So he burned his hand as a baby. He had seizure. There's a lot of PTSD. He was really careful because of all of these accidents. I'm sure you were really careful because of all of these accidents. Had a hard time getting comfortable in bed, comfortable to sleep, had to move all the time. He felt a need for safety. He wasn't grounded, was in fight or flight, feeling soreness is a big piece of that remedy. And then getting into attack mode because you're not comfortable. So we did, I mean, remedies that he tested for, I wrote chamomilla, calendula, senna, and Bellus perennis, 4 remedies in this plant family. And you wrote back to me, first time we gave senna, you had a worm in his stool. He responded well to all of them. Senna and Bellus perennis were best. And you were muscle testing. And you're one of the first moms that I worked with that was also muscle testing remedies and doing that and doing an intuitive approach. And you have so much to share. So tell us more.
Okay, yes. Bellus perennis is one of my favorite remedies. I mean, I could really relate to so much of what you were saying about the whole Compositae family. Definitely was a sensitive person, you know, sensitive to insults, especially early on, but also didn't want to be touched. And I think that that was from, it was complicated. It was like a part of me didn't want to be touched because I was so sensitive to people's energies that it was like, oh my gosh, I need to just focus on, you know, remaining in my integrity, as you said, like getting myself together and not having that extra factor in of who's coming at me to touch me, and feeling all of that. But I think it was also sometimes that, you know, um, it would like maybe trigger in me feeling needy, or like being helped was like, oh, in some way that's where that, like, I want to do it myself. I can just do it myself, you know? Even though I needed the help sometimes, it was like I would push it away too. So definitely could relate to a lot of what you were saying. It was the first person to prescribe this remedy. I don't know if I ever showed you this, to me, was actually Finn.
Oh, cute.
He's
You
very
found a picture of him.
holding a daisy.
Yeah.
And so Finn, I mean, he was so sensitive. He would not, that was the first thing in the outside world that he actually touched and brought to me. And I really think he intuitively was like, Mom, you need this. Or I need this. You know, we both needed Bellus perennis. And so because I was like, oh my gosh, he must like this flower. This is the first thing he's ever touched in the world, and like literally brought to me. So I thought that that was, you know, really funny that it just all makes sense. Like when you were saying the men noticing these flowers, I think Finn really noticed this is the only flower he's ever brought to me is a daisy. So yeah, and it was, Bellus perennis was super helpful for me. Just to be clear, I actually only got into one accident, but my husband was driving with all the rest of the accidents that I was in. And so, so yeah, Bellus for me, more than Arnica, I think I never felt as, I mean, I would feel a shift with Arnica, but with Bellus, it was just fully healing for me. A lot of, after my surgeries, I had many surgeries, going through cancer twice, a double mastectomy, full hysterectomy. And after every one of my surgeries, even to put in, you know, my port surgeries, to put in my port and take out my port, I always turned to Bellus. And it was like, I would feel bruised, like deep within, and Bellus would just resolve a lot of that. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, and it just made me feel safe. Like you say, like I do crave, you know, wanting to feel safe, comfortable. Mm-hmm. I'm really irritable when I'm not comfortable. And so Bellus, I feel like Bellus is like a friend for that, you know, bringing that safety, that comfort, just feeling whole again, feeling like, okay, we've got this, you know. Right.
So, do you feel, yeah. I mean, there could be a lot of questions that you guys have. Like, how do you feel that it, in terms of integrating your whole story? I mean, when we were going through you healing from breast cancer, we would do these I would do the sensation process with Stephanie. So I had her close her eyes and go into what she was feeling. Not only would remedies show up, but past lives came up where you were beaten like multiple times.
Yes, yes. This was so profound. I feel like going through the sensation process, how deep and um, insightful it can be, and so pivotal to one's healing process. Like I I would feel bruised in my back. I was going through this period. I mean, healing's like, it's such a journey, it's such an evolution. I would get like the next level of my healing would come up and my body would show me that. And I think I came to with like soreness in my back. And in that deep process, that journey we went through, I could clearly see myself in a prison. And I was like cowering down and kind of dirty and, um, you know, looking rough around the edges. And there were people on the other side of the prison bars and they were like heckling me and throwing things at me. I feel like there were stones
Yeah, you were being
being
stoned.
thrown. Yes,
Yes.
stones and um, calling me all kinds of names. And then I just saw someone's foot in my back, clearly in my back, stepping on me, holding me down. It definitely felt like a man's boot. And so, so much, you know, it was like, oh my gosh, it felt very much like the patriarchy, like holding, like squashing the feminine in me, squashing the intuitiveness. Like maybe there were past lives where I had been intuitive, and that was condemned for that. That was like the feeling I got. Cause I think my work with you, I mean, I was a muggle before I met you, Angelica. You know, I was just like a plain soccer mom or whatever. And so it was really, I think I was on the precipice of tapping into some of the intuition and the intuitive gifts. And I think what I needed to do was to go back and heal some of that past life stuff, in order for me to feel safe again, to feel safe, in
In your
Stephanie,
body. Just
in my,
like,
yeah,
I remember you showed me your driver's license from before and then after, and you can tell when you're not present, like when you're not present in your eyes or your facial expression. And after you went through this cancer and healing journey, you became so integrated, present in your body, and not only just integrated in your body, but spiritually. You've become so, can you kind of explain, even on a spiritual level, what you went through, even when we talk about fear of death?
yeah. So for as long as I can remember, I've been afraid of death. I think more than most people, and not really knowing why, but just like, oh my gosh, like to the core, that just didn't, like, that was probably one of the scariest things that I could. And maybe it was because of car accidents and, you know, where it was like, oh gosh, here I go again, meeting that. You know, it's so interesting. It's like we have these experiences, the cart before the horse thing, you know, do these experiences, are we having these experiences so we can, is it bringing us to our wholeness, you know, that I have these near death kinds of experiences, because that's the thing that would pull me into, searching for God. You know, it's like I was clear when I was diagnosed with cancer. It was like, it was an eye opener. It was like, oh my gosh, all my other priorities fell to the wayside. And I was like, if I'm going to die, I need to know where I'm going. You know, I need to understand. I need to have a relationship with God. It was just really clear. And so I look at all of that each time I got sick, or each time I faced my mortality, it brought me closer to to finding God and developing a relationship and seeking, really seeking and yearning and wanting to know. And I think that put me on a spiritual path. I was able to find, I kind of was always searching and I dabbled in different things, but then it was like, as I called out, as I yearned to know, things showed up. Teachers showed up. As the students ready, the teachers
I
showed up.
remember before your cancer, dead birds were showing up in your life, and you're like, Angelica, I keep seeing dead birds. Is this a sign? And a horrible thing for a practitioner is when someone asks you, do you intuit that I have cancer? Because it's not something you want to say yes or no to. It's
Right.
like, and it's not something really you should, because it's a huge medical responsibility. But I had to feel into it, and I was like, I do feel you need to get checked out. Something does not feel right. My intuition does feel that something is really wrong. And those guides came through. I just remember that particular one. And
Yes, I remember that conversation really well, and how terrified I was to even talk to you about that. It's like, oh my gosh, what is she going to say? I was sure those dead birds meant that I was going to die. I had been putting off going to the doctor, saying, like, do not want intervention, putting off going to the doctor. And you were someone.
right. So you didn't want to have to go through all of those surgeries.
None of it. I mean, I was I was into natural medicine, and I was like, I don't want anything where I might have to do Western medicine. There was a real dichotomy, it was like, I was just all into alternative medicine. I didn't want anything to do with doctors. And so there was a real resistance in me. And I think it was when you said, whatever happens, we're going to, like, just know that I'm open to whatever's going to help heal you. And it gave me the permission to be like, wow, this person who I really trust and respect is saying, like, we could do both. If you need Western medicine, then that's what we'll do. And I'll still support you through that. I want you to heal. You're my first priority. And so it like opened a door for me that was like, okay, all of Western medicine doesn't have to be awful and, and kill
And I
you.
have to say, this was an aggressive cancer.
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely. I think it was 3 centimeters, the first one, stage 3. It was palpable. You could feel it, even though it didn't show up on imaging. They could feel it. So they kept going with the biopsy and everything. And it was a triple negative kind of cancer, very aggressive. And so, I had to jump the abyss, and it required a ton of faith, and lots of support. But yeah, I mean, there were so many gifts in that, that, just even the whole not really learning to receive support. I felt like I was throwing my whole life into Finn, everything I got
I'd
into Finn.
love for you to share that, because there's a lot of moms of special needs kids listening. And there's the idea that mothers of special needs kids develop cancer. I think there's research to show a higher likelihood of that. And what do you feel like, is there a relationship there?
I think that's an interesting question. I think that a lot of moms with special needs kids, um, a lot of us are sleep deprived. We have high levels of stress.
Mhm.
You will put your kid first. I mean, that is, I don't know, that feels like part of mothering when you have a child who has such significant needs. I mean, to me, it was like, I don't know what else to do. I loved him so much. I had to do everything I could. I wanted to search, I didn't want to leave any stone unturned in helping them. And so, in helping him. So I think, um, I think that there could be some things that do put us at risk, um, given these different factors,
Mhm. Right.
um, in the position that
Losing
we're
your
in.
sense of self, in a way, losing your
Mhm.
integrity, losing your boundaries,
Yes,
which is why it is very important when you heal a child that the mother is just as focused on herself, because you're one
exactly.
unit, and remembering that you are one unit. But part of the cancer was also recognizing that you're separate units as well, that
Yes.
you're not just, you and Finn aren't just one, you're individuals.
That was a huge part of the healing journey. Even after my first bout with cancer, that it was like then Finn had this, we became more kind of close because he was like, oh my gosh, is she going to die? And he had this really deep fear that I was going to die. And so we had to kind of work through that whole bit with like, oh, I am really codependent on you, mom. And yet I'm codependent on someone who might die. So there was a push pull, where he would get really mad at me and was like, I can't emotionally feel this way anymore because the person who I rely on the most might not be here. And so really leaning towards dad. And we just had
Did
to
you break this on
churn through.
purpose? No, it broke. It literally fell over.
Sorry, keep going.
Yeah, so we just had to churn through that whole our relationship, and the codependence had to dissolve, and we had to reform a new relationship, that where there wasn't that codependence. And I think in every difficult thing that has happened to me and us and our family unit, even in the recent dissolution of my marriage, I see where it's helped Finn to grow. So all the ways that I would try to protect him and stay in a codependent marriage, even now that I've taken those steps, to dissolve that, I see his growth and evolution just catapult forward, in his empowerment, as hard as it is, and as much as painful as it was for him to go through that, and to also go through the cancer journeys with me, I've seen it pull him into more of his own empowerment, and his own healing too.
What a powerful and inspiring, Stephanie is one of the most powerful and inspiring stories I have available for you guys. So I won't be able to provide someone as awesome as you for every class, but it's just so amazing. And I've learned so much through your journey. A lot of us are seeking that kind of soul relationship where we're merged with somebody else. But what I learned from you was that when you are so merged, that can hold you back. And that sometimes the soul journey isn't finding a soulmate or somebody to merge with. It's literally finding those pieces where you're merged and unlocking them and finding independence and finding separation. And that can be a very important part. We're kind of prone to finding our comfort and security in other people and codependencies that can really prevent our growth. And this plant family, getting back to the Asteraceae, is about autonomy and that growth of autonomy. And now you've become so empowered and offering your gifts to others, and it's absolutely inspiring, and I feel your heart and your spirit, and it's just such a blessing. Anything else you wanted to share at all, Stephanie, about any of these remedies, or with the group,
I
or
don't
any of you
think
guys have any
so.
questions?
I really like Taraxacum too. I love that remedy for, I remember the last bout with cancer. The chemo was especially rough, and you recommended the Taraxacum with another detox remedy, and they both really helped. And I can't remember what the other one was, but I remember Taraxacum specifically.
Yeah, Taraxacum is dandelion. Right? I actually just took that remedy this week because I was reading through these notes and I was like, oh God, this is such an awesome remedy. I've never taken it. I took it. I started seeing the yellow spots in my vision for like just a second. And I'm like, it's the liver, it's Taraxacum. Um, but yeah, great. I had no idea. I mean, gosh, as a healer, we're meant to create professional boundaries with people. And I did not have professional boundaries with Stephanie. I had such a soul connection with her, and I went through her healing journey as my healing journey. And I can't have that with everybody. But sometimes if a client or somebody draws you into their life, there's so much that you can learn on so much depth. There, you have these soul sisters in the world, and you're one of them. And so I'm so grateful.
Oh, I'm so grateful for you, Angelica. Thank you so much for all you've done for me. I remember one time I was in the hospital and I was literally, that was the time when I was going to lose my mind. I felt like I had that band around, and I was just like, I told my friend, get Angelica, I need a remedy. I just was going to lose it. And that remedy worked instantly. I think it was the cactus.
Oh. So we can use homeopathy integratively while someone's going through chemo, and it's like the worst pain. And like, and we did a lot of remedies actually, like you're going through it, and then we're keeping you centered, and we kept you from being in, victim mode, and kept you in this group of supportive energy. And, it's just being in our hearts, and being connected on a soul level, and shamanic, really. I mean, at some level, we were just in it and going through the journey and allowing whatever came up to come up and show itself. And if it was a hard lesson we had to hear, we heard it, and it was just like, there was one time I was like, I'm hearing that you have to let go of your fear of death. And this is just testing death. And you were just like, whoa. And it was like, whoa,
Oh, Angelica is really good at dropping the truth bombs. It's like, I really needed her help. And then when I would get it, I'm like, are you serious?
Yeah.
And it was like, it really takes a loving, compassionate heart to deliver some of that, especially to someone who's compositized. So right. I so appreciate, oh my gosh, just every step of the way, how you've been there for me. And I absolutely would recommend using homeopathy to anyone going through, if you know anyone going through cancer, the journey, and using Western medicine. I feel like for me being so sensitive, I don't think I would have gotten through it, all the harsh treatment, without the help of homeopathy. So I'm just super grateful. And
like you would have been traumatized again by just the surgeries themselves would have been this whole thing to overcome.
Absolutely. Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yes. And you do other other modalities you've integrated as well. I mean, it's not just Western medicine and homeopathy. It's been Western medicine, homeopathy, yoga, acupuncture, quantum techniques.
Yeah. Yeah. I believe it takes a multi-pronged approach. I really do. I mean, I suppose it depends on the constitution of a person, but for me, I really did need all of that. And so grateful and feel blessed to have access to that.
Just out of curiosity, since I'm going to be teaching on Sina next, was Sina, you gave Sina to Finn, and Sina for parasites. Anything you want to say about that?
Well, right. Literally to see a worm come out in his stool, like visibly, because I think a lot of the parasites are microscopic, and I could see it moving. That just freaked me out, and it propelled me on the path what it did was open my eyes to the truth, because there was always a question of whether or not he had parasites, I think, up until then. And so that's what I love about homeopathy. I feel like there's something magical about it that propels you towards truth. And so then it just became where we were able to do Cena and then look at some other things. I mean, I think we did even consider some, prescription, a pharmaceutical for a certain bit of time. And then we went on to other remedies. Teucrium scorodona was an amazing remedy for him as well. And there were a few other herbs, but muscle testing is really the key, I feel like, when you're embarking on looking at a specific pathogen like parasites, to be able to know what they need at a specific time, whether it's because of the moons or because of, the nature of eggs hatching and dying off, or it was really the muscle testing that fine-tuned you into what they need at a particular time.
And I feel like you could teach a whole class on this in and of itself. If any of you guys,
I love parasites,
but you would muscle test like his systems of the body. And
Yes.
then you would test your muscle testing is eons ahead of mine, because you were going through at so many levels and just really like pushing and clearing things through. So yeah, I just have to say that.
Yeah. And I love that. I loved it. I just looked at it as like, oh God, it was fascinating to me. And I think Finn is in such a better place today because of that deep work into parasites, and which is so related to codependence. I mean, it's just like,
It's all connected,
everything. So I don't believe in just treating, with, it's like taking action steps in your life as well. What I like to think is consciousness-based healing. Where in our consciousness do we have imbalance, and then addressing that, pulling in more truth, and then taking action to align with that truth. That's where I think the most healings really come for us.
Wow. So good. Oh my God, I love you. All right, I'm gonna get through the notes a little bit more, and
thank you for having me.
On and on and on. I'm sure that maybe I'll have you on as another guest speaker.
Oh, thanks, Angelica.
All right, thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Stephanie. All right, bye-bye. Okay. All right, so let's get through the rest of the notes, and I hope you guys were really inspired by that. Okay. Let's see. Okay. So, Cena, we were just talking about, most of you have probably used Cena. I use it when I see kids just kind of aggressively lash out. It's often a stage. I wouldn't say, it's not like I use it in like the majority of kids, but certainly so many kids kind of are naturally parasitic creatures, right? They're living off of us. They are our little parasites. I have an autistic adult who was like, I'm my mom's parasite, and what we want to do is help them become independent with time. We want to help them become autonomous children. So treating a parasite picture with Cena is pretty common to do. Often I do parasite support. Often when I know parasites are a continual problem, we do Cena 30C the day before, day of, day after full moon or new moon, or like Stephanie says, you muscle test around it. Cena isn't the only parasite remedy there is out there, but it's the most common one. You know it when there's picking of the butt, whining, restlessness, striking out, tantrums, teeth grinding, insatiable appetite or picky appetite. Here's an ASD 3-year-old who was doing really well, making gains on a constitutional remedy. He's been doing great, but he started becoming more disconnected, getting addicted to his iPad, showing more aggression, running up to his father and hitting him. He's hitting me now and getting aggressive to his brother. He's licking his hands, scratching his butt, throwing his toys, loose stools, making a new verbal tick. Okay. The sensation from the child is everything's so hard. I'm frustrated. I need to hit as a release. Okay. So this is really common, is that you'll get like forward movement in an ASD case and then it'll backslide because a child is having a parasite issue. So in this case, I actually, his father took Sina and passed parasites as well. So we ended up treating the whole family for parasites. What is it, like Stephanie said, that needs to resolve when we want to heal parasites? The whole family needs to move forward. What is parasitic energy? It's resistance to evolution. What is a parasite? It's an unevolved creature. It's an unevolved, like, I want to live off of you, you know. We are outnumbered on this planet 4-1. There are 4 more parasitic creatures than non-parasitic creatures. Parasitism is a way of life, right? To become humans and to become autonomous means we don't become parasitic, that we're contributors to society. We're contributors in our lives. So how do we create children who are contributors and not parasitic, right? We want them to evolve, and sometimes to treat the parasites in a family as treating what isn't or wanting to evolve. Often it's in dad. It can be in mom too. It can be in anybody, but in this case, it was also with dad, you know? So, chamomilla, some of you guys know how important this remedy is for teething kids, but chamomilla and Sina are almost go hand in hand. If Sina doesn't work, try chamomilla. If chamomilla doesn't work, try Sina. Okay, chamomilla is a little bit, gosh, there's a good differential, and I'll have to give it to you. It's from Farouk Master. But chamomilla is a little bit more kind of tummy, nerves, teeth and nerves, whereas Sina, I see, is a little bit more hitting. You know, in terms of like easy to please, they can both be difficult to please. I feel like chamomilla, nothing makes them happy, whereas Sina, it's just, they just need a release. Here's Paul Herskew's cycle. I'm oversensitive to everything. Pain is discomfort. I'm averse to touch. I get irritated. I cry. I beg. I have a convulsion. Nothing feels right. I want to be held and consoled, but that doesn't feel better anyway. So they're just in this kind of like, I want this, no, I don't want this, contradictory mode. A really good keynote of chamomilla is the bright red cheeks, the blotchy cheeks, and sometimes they have one cheek red and the other cheek not red. Earaches, it can be a great remedy for PMS. I saw that in the Materia Medica. I didn't realize that before, but women who have like really painful periods and they don't know what's going to make them feel better, chamomilla can help. Okay. Let's see. Do I ever see suppressed appetite with these two? Yeah, it can be like a capricious appetite. Like, you know, I want this, I don't want that. You know, sometimes with a capricious appetite too, chlorum, like a low potency of chlorum, which is like hydrochloric acid in the stomach. When a child is always like, no, 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 I don't want that, no, no, no. Sometimes such a low potency of chlorum helps resolve that no, no, no behavior with everything. You know, it's just like, no, it's just, yes. I'm like, could you just please say yes? You know. Let's see, go ahead. Got my own notes here. Okay, here's, you know, a chamomilla case. A child who went to the dentist, you know, was post-dentist. He started acting up. Yeah, so let's see. hitting, pushing, biting. This whole thing started after we went to the dentist for tooth pain. We're exhausted, he's agitated, there's fear. Oh, sound sensitivity as well, can't stand loud noises. Yeah, just whining, irritable children, chamomilla. Maybe adults as well. Okay, and here's a couple more cases that I kind of put in here, but they don't show the remedy that strongly. This is what they're really showing is the Asteraceae family. So I put them in here. Abrotanum is supposed to be for emaciation. There was a strong feeling here of aching body, stiff neck, fear of accidents, wanting comfort. Here's another case of artemisia where intense seizures. The seizure is literally like a head trauma all the time, and artemisia can help with that. This case was so hard. These were people who lived in Hanoi, Vietnam, and they were like, amidst all this trauma, the mom had to be like helicoptered during pregnancy. I mean, it felt like there was totally past life Vietnam War. Like I was just like, there was this just like nonstop trauma. And the kid had nonstop like status epilepticus trauma, was on so many seizure meds. Hard case. I couldn't help it because it was so hard. In cases like this, where people are on seizure meds, they really need to understand what you're trying to do with homeopathy. They need like a whole course on what you're trying to do, because the suppression, the constant suppression is really preventing you from healing the case or helping with the case. Because a lot of the time it's like they're on steroids for asthma, and then they have the epilepsy, the seizure meds, and then that's creating, it's very hard. So I made this little picture for you guys because I realized that so many of these remedies treat so many areas of the body. Like arnica is great for head trauma and just overall trauma. And then there's allergy remedies in this family. There's lung remedies. There's really strong liver remedies, intestinal remedies, joint remedies. So these are all kind of systems of the body. It's a huge plant family. There's 25,000 plants. So there's going to be a plant that's going to fit trauma in this way for some part of the body. And again, I'm putting a lot of these remedies in these notes here for you, but it's still even a fraction of what's available. So not to overwhelm you, but just to provide you with the information. My greatest take home is, what is this plant family for? Injury, trauma, losing integrity of the body. As long as you know that and you feel the case has that really strongly, look at these notes and see if there are any of them that stand out to you. This is in alphabetical order here. So abrotanum is a remedy for malnutrition, wasting, skinny legs. I put in red the physicals from Murphy's Materia Medica, and in blue the mental emotionals from Schulten, because Schulten has really great mental and emotionals. So abrotanum is supposed to be feeling like sex is destructive, avoiding sex. Ambrosia is ragweed, really itchy eyes, watery eyes. I'm not gonna like read through all of these. You guys can read through them, but arnica, aching, pains. We've talked about this. Traumatization of grief or financial loss, injuries, falls, and blows. So this is also included in the Materia Medica, which I think is really interesting. One, the arnica person can be really industrious. So say they lose their money, say like the stock market falls, or it's like 9/11, imagine how many people are in an arnica shock state. So it's also financial like loss or an intense grief can also contribute to an arnica state. of like, I'm okay, but you feel this immense shock from it or this immense kind of trauma. So just putting that out there. Artemisia, the remedy of this last case with the seizures. Scholten says this is one of the most important remedies for schizophrenia. Okay, and I've not given this remedy a lot because I don't see schizophrenia cases, but this is where there's absolute disintegration of the personality. There's maybe seizures, but he says that it doesn't have to be seizures or facial twitching. It can also be that this person is schizophrenic and they live in their own world and they're averse to contact and they don't want people to do things against them. So they're paranoid and they'll like, you'll ask them something and they'll give a really weird answer because they're avoidant. So, you know, think of a schizophrenic homeless person out there. This could be like a great remedy for them. Like they're in their world, avoiding the whole world, and they've been so traumatized, you know, so think of that remedy. Bellis, we've talked enough about. Brachyglotis, we talked about too, for that case of the woman with the back pain from the steroid injection. Isn't that terrible? A steroid injection creating more pain. So in this case, they feel timid and incompetent. They feel like a child degraded by their parents, like their father is criticizing them, making them feel worthless and incapable. Actually, this was a remedy that I intuited for a husband who was in a wheelchair in this family as well. Negative image, role of victim. They look up to their father, but also hate him. Okay, so it's almost like the father takes the power away from the child. Calendula wants justice, wants to protect those who are bullied. Milk thistle. So interestingly, like the real livery remedies, what does a livery person look like in personality? They're irritated. They're irritable. So an irritable person, they're irritable at their spouse. They're hypochondriacal. There's maybe alcoholism, deep acting liver remedy. Chamomilla, the child fights their mother's will. They literally like push against you just because they see you as the threat, right? And so it's like, they want to be carried, but you can't give them what they want. And, you know, Sina, Scholten writes, counteracting their loved ones because they don't want to be locked in. Fears being abused. I thought that was interesting. Artichoke, also a bitter person. It's a bitter remedy. Echinacea. So echinacea, we know is an immune stimulant. The Native Americans used it for snake bites. It's used for when there is like real sepsis happening in the body. And so homeopathically, it's for when you feel a destroyed sense of self, like there's a real disintegration happening as well on the emotional level. The times I've used this have been in reptile cases, interestingly, given that it's for snake bites. So I've used it a lot in homeopathic formulas when I'm trying to clear out like a deep bacterial infection. So you could maybe combine this with like the strep nosode or the staph nosode, and echinacea could be useful. For some people, they have that tendency to wounds that become infected. Think of echinacea. Origeron is called fleabane, but homeopathically it reads, the Materia Medica says it's for hemorrhage. They feel they are good and talented. They hate being told what to do. It's a blow to their self-image. This is not a remedy I've used. I need to learn about it more. Eupatorium bone set is a remedy mostly for the acute flu, when you feel like your bones are aching, your body's aching, you can't get in a comfortable position, you have chills. Important flu remedy. Grindelia is for lung disorders, asthma. Your breathing, you can't breathe when you lay down. You have to sit up to breathe. The sunflower is a spleen remedy. The sunflower is supposed to be somebody who's very proud and wants to stand tall and strong like that flower. Lactuca is lettuce, and it's for like lactation. You can think of it that way. Increases milk in breasts. Also a good remedy for asthma. The materia medica of this, I didn't realize until I read it in Schulten's book, is a kind of a Staphysagrea pulsatilla picture where it's a soft, sweet, wanting to please person who gets shocked from feeling beaten. It seems like a remedy like Stephanie, somebody like her, it's like that kind of energy of a kind person who feels maybe shocked from the harshness of the world. Burdock. Some of you know burdock is an herb for the liver, also for GI and homeopathic, also for cancer, known as a cancer remedy. Yarrow is a huge remedy in herbal medicine, not used a ton in homeopathy. There's a lot of materia medica on it, but I don't find a ton of cases or information on yarrow. It's supposed to be good for all sorts of things, though, from cancer to blows to, nosebleeds, sprains, strains, bleeding during labor. So that might be one that you muscle test, Senecio, ragwort, is for kidney inflammation, lack of reaction of the urinary tract. The person may feel fed up with doing tasks. Maybe they're adrenally fatigued. Solidago, goldenrod, kidney disorders, urine suppressed, weak in the kidneys. I gave this to a friend of mine who had kidney disorders, and then I read this later and it totally fit him. And yeah, easily influenced by group and family views, subject to peer pressure, social expectation, and group morals. He was trying to create a community, like a intentional living community, and he could not get everybody to agree on what to do. And he had all these groups of people he's trying to coordinate it, and it just totally took down his kidneys. And this remedy helped restore that. What's funny is that I won't say what his name is, but his name is within the name of the plant. And I was like, oh my God, he needs this remedy. It's his name. Feverfew, tanacetum. So some of these, this is a remedy I just discovered, is also a remedy for worms, like really bad worms, where the eyes close up. Sometimes worms really affect the vision. It kind of has an occipital, like lower brain impact. And so you'll see kids who have a lot of parasites or brain inflammation with glasses, and they need to work on clearing parasites. But this is one remedy that would be worth a try. This person feels half dead, half alive, even suicidal. Taraxacum, dandelion, like Stephanie said, mapped tongue, gallstones, like liver stuff. These are for people. This remedy is for people who want to please others with a tendency to adapt, which brings them into conflict due to need for autonomy. They take the position of an outsider in order to avoid conflict. I personally can really understand that. I think we probably all try to please others and overly adapt. Maybe we can all take some Taraxacum. Maybe this is why dandelion is everywhere in the suburbs. Because we're all trying to adapt and avoid conflict. It's all in our yards between with the neighbors. I'm just trying to adapt to you. And last one, Wyethia, poison weed, is a good remedy for allergies and throat disorders and like an itchy, irritable throat, dry, hacking cough, that feeling of that you get in the back of your throat. So maybe they have issues with throat chakra and standing up for themselves and expressing themselves. So this is a lot, you guys don't need to absorb all of it. You've got it in the notes. Yes. Okay. Someone's asking how to muscle test. I would say we should have a separate class on muscle testing, and maybe it's something Stephanie and I can, do together, and then put it out there. I've done some classes, but yes, we'll do that. Would Grandilia be good for someone with sleep apnea? Possibly. Yeah. So just this last bit, I don't want to confuse you guys. Some of you guys have taken my whole class and you understand miasms, and you also understand Schulten's stages on the periodic table of elements. There are homeopaths out there who have created these like master maps where everything is on the map, Schulten's map of the periodic table and miasms, and it's all connected. So if you're like, wow, I really feel like I could use a remedy in the cancer miasm, then Sankran has said, well, Bellus perennis is in the cancer miasm, or I really feel like this miasm, I need this miasm in this plant. You can kind of go through and match them up. As well as for stages. So Schulten went through all of these remedies and he put them each into the stages of the periodic table and matched them up. That being said, that they don't completely match up, because like Sankran puts Bellus as a cancer miasm and Schulten puts Bellus as stage 7, which is not cancer miasm. So there you are. It's not perfect. It's not a perfect system. It never will be. But that's today's plant class. Do you guys have any questions? Yeah, quickly how to muscle test. I'll give you my quick story on muscle testing. I was working with moms of special needs kids, and they were muscle testing and having success. So I just started, because I was alone in my room and working online, muscle testing my own arm. And so muscle testing is that your body is a circuit, and when it's truthful, your circuit is strong. When there's not truth, your circuit is weak. And so I started asking myself for the children that I'd be working with, I'd look at them and say, does this child need this remedy? And I would say, I have no idea. I have no idea if this child needs this remedy. Does this child need this remedy? So I would just clear my mind from getting in the way. I have no idea. I really don't. Like, I truly, 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 truly have no idea. And then I would muscle test yes or no. And I would get like an arm that came out straight, I'd be like, yes. And an arm that went down was no. And that's what I did. Like, probably for 6 months, I was like muscle testing off to the side. And then after that, I got tired of doing that, and I started using my fingers to muscle test. But now I don't even do that so much anymore. What muscle testing is it's like when you're aligned in your truth, you feel, is there a feeling, Stephanie? What do you feel, Stephanie? I just feel it's right. This is what feels right. And I would say most homeopaths, this is what intuition is. It's that they have to use a muscle. The muscle is a tool to help you get there. A pendulum is a tool to help you get there. So you can find what works right for you. I worked with a client once where I was like, every time I mentioned a remedy that he felt really good about, he would start to giggle. Like he'd have this internal resonance, and it would just make him giggle, and this energy would move through him. So it's this relaxed feeling. If you're a DO and you're feeling someone's cranial sacral rhythm, the cranial sacral rhythm feels more open, feels more expanded. It feels more space. There's more space and more relaxation. Whereas if it's the wrong remedy, you feel something go into contraction. You feel like there's just a no feeling. You just like, that's it. So a quick way to start is to sway test and to hold a remedy to your heart and say that your heart is a resonator of truth, and it's magnetic, and it will be attracted to what's good for it, and you will be repelled by what's bad for it. And so you will sway backwards when you're standing if it's not good for you, and you'll sway towards it if it's good for you. Yeah. Oh, thanks. Zoe says, I don't muscle test, but when it's a wrong remedy, my heart seizes a bit like anxiety. It feels full and clear when it's right. Exactly. Is there anything you want to add to that, Stephanie? No? Okay. All right, good. All right, you guys, any other comments or questions? A theta healing video on Facebook that shows the different ways to muscle test. Oh, thank you. All right, thanks you guys. Thanks so much. Let's just like close our eyes really quickly just to kind of integrate the class and just take a deep breath in and out. And if there was a composite or Asteraceae picture or vision of one of those plants that really stands out to you from the beginning of class, I want you to look into it, hold it to your heart, or if you can kind of close your eyes, get centered in your heart and see that kind of image of a flower. Maybe it's something that I didn't share today, but it has that sun disk with the rays going around it. And seeing that plant and saying, you're here as my medicine. I'm here to feel integrated, to be more evolved, to heal, to know what's possible. And just end with a note of gratitude in your heart for what is available to us in our life, in our lessons, and with healing. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. All right, thanks you guys so much. I hope that was a really good class. And I don't know what I'm going to teach in 2 weeks because I just feel into it. But if there's a plant or a plant family that you want me to really focus on, I will. All right, thank you, Stephanie. Love you guys so much. I'll send out the recording soon. All right, bye-bye.